You're listening to Sports Connections with David Smale, the show that brings you a fun and intimate look into connections throughout sports. Now here's your host, David Smale.
Kenny Mossman is the Senior Associate Athletics Director for External Operations for the University of Oklahoma. One of the most respected athletics departments in all of college sports, OU consistently turns out championship-level teams, and the support system is a big reason why. Mossman joined the OU staff in August of 2001 as Director of Communications. He has since been promoted 3 times and in his current role supervises 6 administrative unit leaders and a total of 36 full-time staff members. During his first 10 years at OU as the head of the department's communications efforts, he and his staff promoted winners of 10 college football national player awards, 21 All-Americans, and that run includes 2 Heisman Trophy winners and a total of 4 finalists for the coveted award. Tradition continues as the Sooners had back-to-back winners of the Heisman in 17 and 18. Graduate of Southwestern College in his hometown of Winfield, Kansas, Mossman lettered in basketball and was inducted into the school's Athletic Hall of Fame in 2005. He earned his bachelor's degree from Southwestern in 81 and completed a master's degree in mass communications at Kansas State in 1989. Kenny, welcome to Sports Connections.
Well, thanks, David. It's good to be with you.
I got to ask you, how big is your business card with that title?
I always tell people that I wish the paycheck had as many zeros as the title does letters, but
yeah,
the titles have gotten a little outrageous in college sports, and mine's no different, I guess. But you rattled off a lot of units that I oversee. They're overseen by really talented people who make me look good.
Yeah, I understand that well. You've had quite a run, quite a 20-year run at Oklahoma. What drew you to OU to begin with?
I had been at Kansas State in a time when sports were not, the basketball team was successful, but the department as a whole was struggling financially, competitively. Went to Illinois State, which actually is a very successful program on its level, but struggled for interest. There was a hardcore, smaller band of fans who were really into it, but not on a hyper or larger level.
Right.
And I just wanted to make sure that before my career ended that I was at a school where there were people who cared about it as much or more than I did. And you have to be careful what you wish for sometimes, because that's that at Oklahoma things can get awfully intense from time to time, maybe more so than you want.
Yeah, for sure. But it's a great program there. I don't know him well, but I know Joe Castiglione, your athletic director. I know several people who have worked in that athletic department, and everyone I know that works there or that has worked there is just top notch. It's just this sounds trite, but they don't settle for anything but top effort, do they?
No, and I think it's not just the effort. I think there's been an attraction about this place where people really want to work here, and so we've been able to attract really good staff. And when we open a job, there will be a lot of people, a lot of quality people who will want to work here, and that has made our job a lot easier. I've always felt like through the years, Oklahoma's always had the resources that it needed to be successful. That goes back as long as I can remember. And the other thing that we've had, quite frankly, is a state that probably puts out more quality athletes than a state this size should. And so you put all those things together, but then Joe just sets a really high bar in terms of what our expectations are, and then has equipped our staff in a way that allows them to be successful. So it's a great situation. I mean, there's a reason why this place has been successful for as long as it has been. It's got a lot of the right pieces to it.
Yeah. Now, your primary sports for oversight at OU are football and softball. Both programs compete for national championships every year. The coaches and the players obviously get a lot of credit for that, but talk about the importance of the infrastructure within the athletic department that allows them just to focus on the field.
Well, that's a good point. We have such a huge staff, people who are handling everything from event management to academics to, all facets of the operation. And it's so much different on a level like this where every need is met, everything is supplied. And we've got great coaches. Lincoln Riley obviously doing a great job in football, and he took over a very strong program from Bob Stoops. Patty Gasso is the softball coach, and I've said for a long time that she's probably as good a coach in any sport that I've seen in 30 years in college athletics. Just kind of a sidebar on her. She has one of the more remarkable stats. She's been here for 26 years, and they have never been unranked in a weekly poll.
Oh my goodness.
And I've told people if that was true in football or basketball, you'd hear about it all the time.
Yeah.
But you don't hear about it in softball. But not once, not in a single weekly poll, have they ever been unranked. And so it's just been a remarkable run for her. And so there's a great infrastructure here that supports them, allows them to really focus on the very specific aspects of being coaches. But by the same token, they're very good at what they do. And have carried our banner very well.
Well, and it's, we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but OU is a destination. It's not a stepping stone. There may be exceptions, but I can't think of anybody who left OU to go to another program, maybe to go to the pros, but not to go to another college program. That is the place to be, or one of the places to be, regardless of sport in college athletics, isn't it?
That's a good point. It's pretty uncommon for people to leave here for anything but kind of a very obvious career improvement. Got a really good place to live, very good climate here in Oklahoma, and a great competitive situation that's at a good university too. So we've got the academic package to throw in there with it. So yeah, it's one of those places in college sports where once you get here, you kind of stop looking for other things.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I remember visiting you in your office in December of 2017, one of many times I've had the privilege of being in your office, but that was prior to OU's appearance in the 2018 Rose Bowl. And you had a 3-ring binder on your desk that had to be 3 inches thick with preparation notes, things like that. And I don't think that was the only binder, the only literature you had pertaining to that game. Talk about all that goes into just that one aspect of your job.
Well, the bowls are a massive undertaking because you're, in most cases, now it wasn't true in a COVID year, but in most cases, you're taking your entire operation, literally lifting it up and moving it across the country for a week. And that includes administrative staff help, office machines, office equipment. You can't get into you can't get too minute a detail that we don't take.
Right.
But there's more to it than that, because when you get there are certain obligations that you have to live up to. There are certain events that you have to attend. For instance, when we take our families to a place like the Rose Bowl, the game provides X number of tickets to go to Disneyland. So you've got your administrative staff has to hand out all those tickets and decide who gets what. And that's just one event. So you've got something going on every single day. So we actually have a staff meeting at the side of the bowl every morning, and it usually goes on for 30 minutes to an hour just to review the previous day, get prepared for the day ahead, and then look to the following day. And I haven't even talked about the team aspects. You've got practice facilities, so you have to move a weight room, you move your practice equipment. It's endless, very, very complicated, and requires a lot of really good people and a lot of good logistics to get it done. Yeah,
for sure. And some people may not remember. I'm sure you remember it, but for a different reason. OU lost to Georgia in double overtime in that game, and it had to be one of the most exciting games in the 7-year history of the college football playoff. You've got so much on your plate before, like we just talked about, even during and after the game. Do you get to enjoy the game itself?
Yeah. Well, I've said for a long time that for all the work that we do to get ready to play, the best time for us is when the game is being played, because there's really not much more you can do at that point.
Right.
And so enjoying it, I don't know if that's the right word. You're usually on needles waiting for the outcome. And we're like everybody else. We're probably bigger fans than our fans are, because we've got a lot more at stake there than they do. They can flip the TV off and go to bed and forget about it. We don't have that ability. It's right in front of us every single day. And to a large degree, we do a lot of other things to try to make our department successful, but nothing replaces winning. And so when our program's winning, we're excited. And when we're struggling, or if we lose a game, then we know our job just got a little bit more difficult. So we tend to be a little bit more probably agitated during a game than most fans do.
And yet, you for at least your 20 years there, you've had very little but success. I mean, you talked about Bob Stoops coming in. I remember when he took over, it was the 98 season. Is that right? Or 99?
He came in 99.
99. And by 2000, they were competing for the national championship after some lean years, certainly by OU standards. But you really haven't had a whole lot of downtime. I mean, not obviously you get breaks and stuff, but as far as not competing for championships, you haven't had that. Do you have? I'm sure you have. Let me ask it this way: what are some of your favorite memories of your 20 years at OU?
Well, you hit on one of them. We actually played in a Rose Bowl before that when we played Washington State. I think it was 02 or 03. And I'd never been to the Rose Bowl before. You hear a lot about it, and it's incredible. There can't be a better venue. I always hear that the service academies back east are great venues. I've been to Air Force, and it's a great one too. But the Rose Bowl is certainly one of the most beautiful venues to play in. So that would be one. I think being in the Heisman room in New York City when they announce the winner and it's your guy, that's a very unique thing. And you learn after you go once that during the commercial right before they announce the winner, the cameramen position themselves around the winner. So you learn to figure out who won before the actual announcement's made. That was obviously very significant. Being with softball, being the softball administrator when they've won the national championship, there's just nothing like seeing a team dogpile and being the champion of a sport over a long season. So those would be highlights. But I think probably the thing that I'm most excited about has been, I mentioned earlier, you can hire really good people here because a lot of people want to be involved with this, and I've been in a position to hire some really good people, and then to watch them go on in their careers. There's a vice president at the Atlanta Falcons who was here. There's several guys who now have my position at OU at other schools like Nebraska and Kansas and places like that. People who work for the Oklahoma City Thunder or for various other schools. That's probably the most exciting thing I've seen is to watch people come in here and they're young and they're just getting started in their careers and then to watch them really grow. And then they go out to these great jobs. That's probably, I think of all the things, that's probably the most rewarding.
Yeah. I want to go back to a couple of them that you mentioned. One, that the softball championships are played in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. That probably makes it more special that there's probably an awful lot of OU fans at the Women's College World Series there. Right. So that makes it maybe even a little bit more special. Is that true?
Absolutely. When on the nights that we play for the national championship, it's probably 90% OU fans. Yeah.
And then the other one is the Heisman room. And I hadn't really thought about that before you mentioned that. But has there ever been a Heisman presentation when you've been there that Billy Sims hasn't, as they're announcing, still boomer to hear somebody in the room go Sooner? And are you the guy that responds, by the way?
I don't respond, but I've been there for that multiple times. It's a very dignified event, but when they announce the winner, it kind of goes up for grabs, and it's a really neat thing. And what most people don't see is that's actually about a 3-day event that goes on. So you get there the day before the announcement's made. And then you go to the announcement on Saturday, and then on Sunday you do a media tour with the winner and get around to a number of NFL Today and things like that. And then on Monday night there's a very big banquet there in New York City that a lot of celebrities attend. So it's more than just that night. It's really a cool thing. And so for someone who wins that, it's pretty rewarding, but it also will help you understand why sometimes the Heisman winners don't perform that well in the bowl games, because it can become a life dominating event.
For sure. And just talk about the two different personalities, the last two Sooners to win it. You got Baker Mayfield, who knows how good he is. I don't mean this disrespectfully at all. Right. Baker, we're recording this right after the Chiefs beat the Browns in the divisional round, obviously, and so we heard an awful lot about Baker Mayfield. Then you have Kyler Murray, who seems at least to be more reserved. Just talk about dealing with those personalities in your role with overseeing football and all that you've done. dealing with those two personalities in the exact same situation, scenario, back-to-back years, how different was that? And which, I don't want to say which was more fun, but there was probably different fun parts for each one, weren't there?
Yeah, the one thing that they had in common is they were both really easy for our people to work with. You can run into a situation sometimes where you get a great player who can get a little prima donna on you, and neither one of those guys did. In fact, I can count those guys on one hand in my 20 years at Oklahoma. We've had very good luck with having just really good guys. You see a Baker Mayfield on the field, you think you know him, but you don't really know him because what you're seeing there is the adrenaline-infused personality, and what you don't get to see is just the day-to-day. And I understand that if I wasn't working at Oklahoma, I probably wouldn't like Baker Mayfield based on what I'd seen on the field. But having been around him and watched him as just a student athlete on our campus and watch him interact with other people, you learn that the real part of him is the part that most people don't see. And that's probably true of both of those guys. I mean, Kyler is definitely more understated. He's quieter. That's definitely true. But both of them were very cooperative. Both of them were very vested in OU, which I really appreciated because neither one of them started here. But I think if you asked either one of them today, are they truly Crimson Sooners, they would both say without question. And they were both endearing in their own ways. I mean, there was something about the cool of Kyler Murray that was a neat thing for us. I mean, he could do just remarkable things, then he'd act like it was no big deal. And you still see that in the NFL. But Baker was fun too, and Baker was such a magnetic personality. And you know, the Browns are carried on the local radio station here in Norman, which ought to tell you something about the mark that Baker Mayfield left. And so really thankful to have been around both of them. Very, very different, but both good people at their core, and both guys who represented us in the end very well. Yeah,
well, you know, I've been around college athletics for more than 40 years, about almost as long as you have, if you count your playing days and your sports information days and stuff. And the one story that I like to tell that resonates with that made me think of that is I did a book on North Carolina women's soccer back in the early 90s. And I went down to Chapel Hill. It was during the summer, and I did interviews, did work on that. And I remember going down to Franklin Street for lunch with one of the soccer coaches and riding in his convertible where adults are supposed to ride. I was sitting in shotgun in the front seat, and sitting not in the back seat, but on the back bumper or the back part with their feet in the back seat were Christine Lilly and Mia Hamm. And those names will resonate with people who are soccer fans, and they're just being college kids.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things I don't think people recognize being involved in college athletics is you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds generally who are at their core kids. Mm-hmm. They just happen to be really good at sports in this case. That's got to make it's got to keep you young, but it's got to make you feel good about the work you're doing, doesn't it?
It does. You know, it's hard to see them get attacked sometimes on social media and the things they get subjected to, and they didn't sign up for that. But yeah, it's fun to be around them. They're like anybody else in the human race. There's some of them that aren't that much fun to be around, but by and large, the vast majority of them are terrific and a lot of fun to be with, and not as caught up in their success as everybody else is. And that's one of the best parts of doing this. And it's sad on one hand when they leave, but on the other hand, then you always get a new group that's coming in, and the cycle starts all over again. And gosh, if I tried to count up all the kids that I've worked with through the years, it would be a mind-boggling number. But no, they're great, and that's why most people get into this. They want to be around that, and that's the aspect of the job that never lets you down. For
sure. Everyone's job has been affected by COVID. How has it made your job more difficult?
I think just, the obvious things. We don't have 85,000 people in our football stadium, so our revenues have taken a hit, and, we're having to really make some difficult decisions going forward. Fortunately, at Oklahoma, we haven't had to lose a lot of staff, but still a lot of hard decisions. I think the hardest part is just being you're just not connected to anybody.
Yeah.
We're not connected to our staff. We're not connected to our fans. I mean, when this happened, we launched a very robust digital program to try to maintain some close relationships with our fans, but it's still on a screen. So it's not personal. That part's very difficult. And I found the same thing with our staff. And you hear a lot of people say, "Well, I've found that working from home is as good or better for me." I couldn't disagree with that more. If I need to have a brainstorming meeting where I need to collaborate with some other people, and we can't get in a room around a whiteboard like we often do, I just don't think we're as productive. So I've got cabin fever big time, and I've been going into my office a lot. But I'm ready to get us all back in there. We're not as effective. I don't think we're as productive, and so those have been probably the biggest frustrations.
Sure. Talk about memories of your time at Illinois State and Kansas State before that.
Yeah. Got to work for some great people. I went to Illinois State because Ron Wellman was there, and a friend of mine knew Ron really well and felt like he would be a really good leadership mentor for me. And so I wanted to go work for him, and was not disappointed in that. He was a phenomenal athletics director, just retired at Wake Forest, I guess, a year or two ago. But Ron is terrific, and I really respected him. Got to work for Rick Greenspan, who was also a very good athletics director there. The thing about those schools is you learn to do more with less, and I was really proud of that. I wouldn't trade my 10 years there for anything. That was 10 great years in my career, and I grew a lot there, became more resourceful there, and worked with a lot of people that I respect a lot. Kansas State was a period where we were struggling so much with football. I can remember stories where, there was just no cash flow in the department at all. And I can remember getting an expense check on a Friday, and they would tell you not to cash it until Monday. I mean, it was that thin. And so that was a very difficult time. Now, we had some good basketball success there. That was the period in time when we did something very exciting at the time that I, in retrospect, think it was probably a mistake, and that was moving out of Ahern Fieldhouse.
Yeah.
Bramlage was such an exciting thing, and it wasn't until a few years later that the more retro approach to basketball facilities became in vogue. And I've always wondered, personally, I've always regretted that they didn't stay there. I don't know if they feel that way at Kansas State or not, but I think you probably could have done a renovation project in that facility and made it one of the most unique basketball buildings in the country. And that's to take nothing away from Bramlage Coliseum. That's a nice facility, and I served the university very well. But Ahern was special on a different level. There weren't, I know people like to talk about Allen Fieldhouse, and rightly so. It deserves all the accolades, but I don't think they realized that Ahern Fieldhouse was every bit the same atmosphere, if not even a little bit more. And I know that's blasphemy in Kansas to say that, but it was on that level.
Yeah. Being a K-Stater myself, it pains me every time to say it, but I believe that Allen Fieldhouse is the best venue in the country. And I've been from everywhere from Pauley Pavilion to the Dean Dome and Cameron Indoor and Madison Square Garden for a Georgetown St. John's game. I think Allen Fieldhouse, but I agree with you. If Ahern was still around, it would be, 1A and 1B, and pick which one is 1A. My fondest memory of Ahern Fieldhouse was actually before you and I met, and or about the time that we met, and Oklahoma was ranked number 1 in the country, and they had Dave Seeger was their sharpshooting. It was early years of 3-point shooting. And I remember Oklahoma came in averaging like 69 points a game, and K-State held them 109 points a game, and K-State held them like 62. Something beat them 69-62. And I remember one play specifically. Seeger took a long 3-pointer, caromed off the rim. Steve Henson grabbed the ball beyond the 3-point line and tried to call timeout. The refs couldn't hear him. And so he just sticks his fist up in the air to signify timeout. And the band started playing. At least we thought they did, because I was sitting right behind the band and I could see the trombones going back and forth, but you could not hear the band. And I was in the row behind them. The atmosphere was it
was really loud. I remember Mitch Holtis and I were doing the basketball games on the network at that point, and there were times where he and I would have to, when he was talking, he would have to grab my arm so I wouldn't talk, because you could, even with headsets on, you couldn't hear each other.
Yeah.
And so if I was going to make a comment, I would reach over and grab his forearm, and I would say my color commentary, whatever that was. Then I'd let go of his arm, and he would know that it was okay to go ahead and talk again. So, and I'm not making that up. That really happened. So it was that loud in there. Yeah.
All right. I've got a question. I'm going to ask you to pat yourself on the back here. You have been successful at every stop of your career. Do you have a secret sauce?
I don't think so. I've been blessed with never having a super inflated evaluation of myself, and I do think that's a blessing because it keeps you working hard every single day. I always feel like I'm falling a little bit short of what I should do, and I don't know if it's humility to say that humility has been your best gift, but I think that has been.
Yeah.
Just because I've never been very consumed with myself or whatever skill I have. I recognize that I've often relied on the strengths of other people to be successful. And so I guess just being a team player, I think the one thing, David, that God probably blessed me with was I've always been able to pick out in a job interview situation, I can usually pick out good people. And I've always had really good staff around me. And so I guess if I was going to brag on myself at all, it would just be that I've had a little bit of an ability to find the good people and hire the right people out of a pool of applicants. And I'm telling you, it's not made up, and any coach will tell you this. You're as good as the people around you. And I've always figured out a way to have really good people around me.
I remember, this is on a personal note for me, when you were at Kansas State and you earned your master's degree in mass communications, you sat next to a guy in one of those classes and developed a friendship that has lasted for about 35 years now. That guy was me, obviously. One night you and I were talking about the fact that Kansas State was closing a Hearn Field House, ending a 38-year run of housing the most successful men's program in the Big Seven and then the Big Eight during that era. And I don't know if you remember this, we discussed what the athletic department was going to do to commemorate it. And you said, well, you're going to sell T-shirts. And when I suggested that doing something more substantial, you asked what I meant. And I said something about a book. And you encouraged me to come to your office the next morning to discuss me writing it. I remember, I've told several people, I interviewed Steve Miller for one of these podcasts recently. And I remember telling him the negotiation was just so funny. As I've written 22 books now, and I've been through intense and laborious negotiations. I sat down in your office. We chatted about something for a couple minutes. You said, let me make a phone call. You picked up the phone and you called Lon Kruger and you said, Coach, I got somebody here I want you to meet. Can we come down? Next thing I hear, okay, great. You hang up the phone. We walk in. You introduced me to Lon Kruger. This is in during the season in '88. And Lon being a great guy, and you obviously are blessed to be with him now at OU. We talked for a couple of minutes, and you said, well, David has the idea. You, again, going back to something you just said, you gave me the credit when it was your idea that I do it. But you said, David thinks he should write a book on the history of a Hearn Fieldhouse. And he said, well, what do you think? He said, well, he's a good writer. I think we should do it. He goes, okay, picks up the phone, calls Steve Miller. He says, Steve, I got somebody I want you to meet. Okay, we'll be right down. We walk down the hall to Steve's office. We walk in. Lon says, Steve, this is David Smale. He's a friend of Kenny's, and they want to do a book on a Hearn Fieldhouse. Steve says, well, what do you think, Lon? He goes, well, Kenny says he's good. I go, okay, we're done. That was
you probably should have negotiated a little better deal.
I guess. I don't know. But that was, I laugh about that, but that got me involved in a career that it's gone on for more than 30 years now. First of all, do you remember that morning about that intense negotiation?
I remember going to Lon's office to talk about it. I remember the initial discussions on it. And at that time, I don't think that sort of a project was kind of unique in college sports. I mean, I'm joking that we should have negotiated a more difficult deal, but at that time, there really wasn't much of that sort of thing going on. So I don't know that we even knew that we had anything to negotiate. But in the end, it worked out fine because we wound up with a really good product. And as I recall, I think it did pretty well at market. And
it did.
So it was a win-win. I mean, everybody benefited out of that deal.
And it's funny because when I talked to Steve about that, I reminded him of the conversation, and his immediate response was, if Kenny said you were good enough, that was all I needed to know. You know, we talked about the fact that you're well respected. You're also well liked. Just talk about the fact of being able to, I don't know, have a positive influence on people like that, where the athletic director, who's got a lot of things to worry about, not counting a whole new project, who just basically took your word that this was something to do. Just talk about earning that respect.
Well, I think it all goes back to how you treat people. And are you honest? Are you trustworthy? Are you hardworking? I mean, those sound like, okay, yeah, but what about, shouldn't you be quoting something out of a leadership book? And I really just think that it gets back to being there when you say you're going to be there, doing what you say you're going to do, pouring yourself into it all the time, never having to be pushed. And when you do that, you start to build a level of credibility, and people will trust you, and they will defer to you in moments like that. And I really think it's I was going to say it's that simple, but those aren't really simple things. Those are things that require a lot of intentional effort to be sure that you're resonating with people that way. And and then I think the other piece of it is there are so many egos in our business, and so many people who are, and a lot of egos among people who don't have any right to have an ego. And I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name anybody, but
I was going to say, that doesn't sound like the Kenny I know.
I have no reason to ever be egotistical about anything that OU does, because I stand on the shoulders of other people who down through the years have put this place in a position to be successful. Stand on Joe's shoulders because he's led it to be the way that it is. But go back to Bud Wilkinson and before. I mean, all of us here stand on the shoulders of somebody else. And if I ever got too full of myself and thought, I'm really the stuff here at OU, how foolish would that be? And so I just think that has to be your approach. The moment you start to think that you're irreplaceable, or that the success of a place relies solely or greatly on you, then you've lost it. And here's what will happen. Other people will see that in you before you do. And when you lose the support and the respect of other people, then your ability to be effective goes away. So I just think it's making sure you keep your own self in check, and then just doing what you signed up to do, and do it to the best of your ability.
Now, I know you've written a book. Talk about that book here for a second, then I got to follow up to that.
Yeah, I wrote the Oklahoma Football Vault a few years ago, and then we actually reissued it a couple of years after that when Bob Stoops retired. It's a history of OU football. There were a number of the Vault books that were done around the country. I just did the one that was done for OU. It's a unique book because it's got memorabilia stuffed inside of it. So it's very much a coffee table style book. I mean, I wrote it, and I'm sure some people read it, but it's not like a book where you sit down in a chair and read through it. It's more of a do 10 pages here and then come back to it later. So that was good. They only gave me 6 months to write it, so it was. I would never do that again. I mean, I would love to write another book, but never in that time frame. It consumed every minute of every day that I wasn't working for OU. I would literally get home from work and start working on it and work on it until midnight. And of course, that kind of book requires a lot of research too. Yeah. So it was all consuming. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad I can point to it and say I did that. But the actual part of doing it is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And so there's an accomplishment there, but I don't think I would bite that off again.
I was going to ask you if you enjoyed it, but it sounds like it was more relief that it was done than celebration.
There's no doubt. Yeah.
Now, you also teach two different classes in sports administration at OU. What are you passionate about away from the job?
I mean, away from the job, I spend most of my time in church-related activities or chasing my kids around, watching them play sports. I don't really have a lot of other hobbies. I tell people golf gave me up. I didn't give it up. So I don't really have I work out, here and there to try to keep myself in decent shape, but very involved in my church. I speak quite a bit around the state of Oklahoma and a little bit in the surrounding states for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I've had some preaching opportunities in some churches. Those are important to me. And then just family time I think the older you get, the more you appreciate that. As a younger dad, you're caught up in a lot of things, and then you get a chance to kind of take stock of your life and what things are really important, and you figure out it's the family. And so that's my favorite thing to do right now, is just to be with them. But those two things occupy most of my time.
And talk about your family. I know you've got 4 kids, right?
We've got 4. The youngest one is still with us. The other 3 are out on their own, but we've still got Andrew here, and he's good little athlete and plays all the sports, and we get a chance to go around and watch him play a lot, and he's big for his age, so that helps him be pretty successful. And my wife Amy works in the athletics department here at OU too, so we're a Sooner family through and through, and we're having a ball. I mean, it's a great time of life for us.
All right, well, Kenny, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. I always appreciate the fact that if I see you at a sporting event, you're always gracious, and you don't forget your old friends. So it's been a pleasure to have you join us today.
No, thank you. It's pleasure's mine.
Thanks for listening to Sports Connections with David Smale. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and rate the show from your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more about David Smale and his work by visiting davidsmalebooks.com. Don't forget to join us weekly for new episodes. Until next time.